little bees. Welcome to part 6, 7, I don't know, of this seemingly never-ending podcast series, Stories from the Inside, where we're interviewing past students and seeing what their experience is, just kind of learning what's wrong with the school system, what's going right in the school system, and hopefully we come out of this big experience with more knowledge and we're able to fix what's wrong. Today's guest, we have a more mature student. They've been through, I think, most of their school career. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Allison Harper, and yes, I am an adult student at this point in my life, but have been through a lot of schooling. So excited for the interview.
I think this will be a nice, interesting new perception of the school system, because we've had a lot of younger students with these interviews. So anyway, let's get into this. First, give me a quick run through of your school experience. Elementary school, middle school, high school, college, whatever you think is important or interesting for this.
Where I went to elementary school, it was a rural area. At the time, I went to Manchester Elementary School, K through 5. Then I went to North Carroll Middle School. That was grades 6 through 8. Then went on to North Carroll High School, graduated in 1994. And then I started college while I was in high school and completed 3 associate's degrees. The first one was like more of a liberal arts study. Fine arts was my major. English was my other major. Then my second associate's degree was in massage therapy. My third was in physical therapist assistant. And then I just completed my bachelor's degree this past December in psychology with a focus in addictions counseling. And I just applied for my master's degree, so I'm just waiting to hear whether I get into that. So I'm excited.
That's great. You're crazy, but that's great. That's a lot of stuff for one person. Yeah. I should have thought of more interesting questions for this, but we'll go with what I got, and we'll come up with what we come up with. So, tell me about your best. We'll go with best teachers, and what made them so good. I'm sure you've got a couple.
Oh, definitely. The first one that pops into my mind was one that I actually just used as a reference for my master's application. She is, her name is Professor Donnellan, and she's based out of Tampa, Florida. So I've never actually physically met her, just through our virtual classroom. But she has had years of experience teaching, and she just I guess to like describe what made her really great was that she was approachable, she was down to earth, she was always available to us if we had questions. She was very encouraging. There were no dumb questions for her, even though she was like super intelligent. And but yeah, she was fair with her grading, and I just felt like she was kind of like one of those people that I wish that I lived closer so she could be my mentor, because she's really just that great. And I guess in other programs and education experiences, I've had a few teachers and professors that they were engaging, that like things that made them interesting and great teachers were that they were engaging. It wasn't just that they had great experience in life. They had a diverse portfolio. They knew how to keep you interested. They would share their experiences, but also leave a lot of open area for open discussions. And they never made us feel stupid. Like, if we had questions that maybe were mundane or whatever, they never made us feel that way. They would address the questions and treated us with respect. Even in high school, I had teachers like that. There was just something special about them. They were interested in us. Conversely, I've had teachers that weren't so great, and they didn't seem like they wanted to be in the classroom. And it was purely a job to them. They had no passion. Whatever passion they had for teaching at one time was gone. So it made you wonder why they even got into it. It's like if you're working with students, you have to take an interest in the students and what they're learning.
Yeah, I agree with that. There seems to be some common themes with what makes a good teacher. That you've discussed, and what everyone else has discussed is this interest in the students and this approachability. Funnily enough, the next question is, tell me about your worst teacher, and what made them so bad, but you kind of already started covering it.
My worst teacher, when I first started out working on my bachelor's degree, I was at University of Maryland, College Park, which oddly enough is where I'm applying to do the master's program. And I ended up switching majors because I kept failing calculus. And I think part of the reason why I kept failing calculus was because the teacher I had spoke very broken English. Like I'm pretty sure he was from Germany. And he taught so quickly that, first of all, I'm trying to understand what he's trying to say and also trying to understand the information that he's giving us. And I didn't feel like there was any help outside of the classroom. He wasn't approachable. It was almost like he didn't have time to bother with someone like me who wasn't getting it. It was like, you're going to have to find help. And, that being my first big college experience was horrible.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Especially with calculus, that's a hard subject. I was lucky to have some very good calculus teachers who were quite the opposite of your calculus teacher. They were approachable, and they always made sure that you understood what was going on. And there was plenty of practice for figuring out how everything worked, and just generally being a good teacher. Actually, my math teachers, I would say, are some of the very notable teachers in my experience with school. To move on to the next question, were you in any gifted student programs? And what was your experience with that?
Actually, in elementary school and middle school, I was in what they called at the time the Gifted and Talented program. And I don't know that there were any real benefits to being in that at the time. It just meant that you were really smart and you got put in more difficult classes. You would get extra work in addition to your regular course load, which, elementary and middle school, like, how difficult is that?
Yeah.
But that was the only difference, was that, you just get these supplemental things, but it didn't really, in my opinion, those kinds of things, they don't matter once you're out of high school. I think we're on the same page with this, but I don't see the purpose in that, in those kinds of things, because it doesn't matter, honestly, in the long run. Now that I'm an adult, it doesn't really matter. They don't care. People don't care that you have those things in your repertoire.
Oh yeah. No one in your adult life is going to ever come up to you and be like, "You're in the honors program, right?" No one cares. No. I think last episode we talked about the honors program and just how much of a waste of time and how messed up it is. But on the same vein as gifted student program, were you in any AP classes? Did you take any AP classes? Or did they even offer AP classes?
No, I didn't take any.
No?
No, I mean, I don't think that I did in high school. Like, 'cause that would be the only time they would have offered them, and I don't think I took any in high school.
Do you know if your school did offer them, though? Did that I assume that was a school thing at the time?
I think they did, but I may have. I think they had like AP science courses, but I don't remember there being any. I don't think there was an AP English or, like now the AP history. I think there was science and maybe math.
Okay. That's interesting because nowadays we have like a dozen plus. And obviously during this podcast series, we talked a lot about AP classes. So it's interesting to hear that it wasn't really a thing back then. I guess you were more prepared for college and just high school and just the regular high school experience. And they didn't see the need to better prepare you, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did your schools handle conflict or psychology issues and bullying? That sort of stuff. Conflict, psychology, bullying.
So back when I was in like grade school, prior to college, there weren't a lot of conflicts, and I think mostly because if kids had conflict when I was a kid, they just beat each other up and then it was resolved. There were no teachers getting involved in it. We didn't have the issues that teenagers and kids coming up through school. We didn't have the same issues then. I mean, I was a nerd, but I was kind of an outcast in high school. I went through the goth phase where I was, I dressed in black and I shaved the sides of my head, and but I still I was friends with the jocks. I was friends with just about everybody, and no one ever made fun of us because we were different. We just accepted each other. Just it didn't matter there were no cliques, and if there were, I just wasn't aware of it because we just didn't have the things like kids do now. And I feel like social media plays a huge part in that. But because I think kids, they get brave when they're behind a screen and they don't have to face somebody. So I think that plays a huge part. Yeah, I think that plays a huge part in that nowadays.
That's very interesting. Because I know, like you said, nowadays it's very different. I've been bullied myself. I only had the one bullying experience, but still it was rough. I know plenty of, we'd have fights break out once a week-ish, give or take. But every time the teacher would get involved, or it would be in the bathroom and no one would know about it. That's very interesting. I wonder what I think I have to agree with you that social media probably plays a big role in it, because then you can have throughout this podcast we talked a lot about the GSA in high school. That's now a thing. And when we had this protest, this riot thing, it was all pretty much done through social media. Death threats were sent through social media. The backlash was all done through social media until the drama club and my friends brought it to the school through our little protest and bringing pride flags in the school and all that. But yeah, we don't really have the if you get into a fight nowadays, you're going to detention and you're getting kicked out of school. So it's interesting to hear that back when you were in school, it didn't really work like that. Interesting. Do you remember if your school did anything for equity, like gender related, race related, socioeconomic related, which is actually a topic we haven't talked about yet? Stuff like that.
So, as far as that goes, again, we never had issues, and I don't know whether it was because I had friends in high school who were definitely part of the LGBTQ plus community, but it just wasn't. If there was stuff going on, I was never aware of it. You know, one of my good friends, Mark, in high school, he was openly gay, and everybody knew he was, but nobody ever tried anything. Like, no, just wasn't. There wasn't that stream of hate like there is now, and I don't understand where that came from, honestly. But and again, maybe it was the area that I grew up in, but there were very few people of color in my class. I'm sure there's a lot more up there now because of that area it's more developed now. There's people coming up from other areas that weren't living up there before. It was primarily white when I grew up, but I mean, I can count on one hand how many African Americans were in my class, and that's not even using all 5 fingers. So, you know, that was never an issue. And even for the kids, there was never that, like, it's just, I don't know where this hate thing came from, because it didn't exist. It wasn't there. Not in my little neighborhood, not in my school. Maybe it was going on other places, but I honestly, it was not going on in my school. And maybe it was because the school had a policy in place that didn't allow for discrimination, but it just didn't exist, you know? So I don't know. We didn't have to fight so hard for it back then.
Very interesting. Again, like these sort of eye-opening things. I actually know a African American gay kid who, in my acting class today, we did solo performances where we told a story. I told the story of how I met my girlfriend. Other people told different stories. This kid told the story of his experience as an African American gay man in his work. And it was very comedic, but it's also kind of like, he had this threat chart, right? He had like this invisible threat chart. And at the top of the list was like old white people, because they're racist and homophobic. And it's just kind of weird, because like, this poor guy he's hilarious, and like his energy is through the roof. He's great. But he has to deal with this hate from so many different people. And I'm with you. I don't know where this came from based on like your perception. It's not that far away. Like, we're not that far away time-wise.
No.
I don't think, I mean, it can't only be social media. There has to be something going on societally. I mean, there's been a lot of rough things happen since, like, between your and my time. But, I don't know. That would be something interesting to figure out, why we're all hating on each other nowadays.
I mean, I have theories, but they're just theories. They're just my own ideas. But, you know, I can't be the only one that thinks that. I can't be the only one that thinks the way I think. You know, like, it isn't just social media. It's the people running the country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's old white men running the country. I mean, come on. And, you know, these old ways of thinking, and but it's not all old white people who think that way. So it's like, you know, what is it? What is it that keeps this, you know, it just keeps escalating, you know, and there are groups of people who try to de-escalate the amount of hate and just discrimination that is occurring in the country. But, you know, when does it end? You know, because it might get better for a little while. Actually, it's never gotten better. It's only getting worse.
Yeah.
But like, we've had these periods of time where we've come together, like 9/11, you know, and you know, we all came together as a country, but then we're right back where we were, even worse. So, I mean, I don't know.
We had this discussion the other day, well, yesterday in my education class, which is what this project is for, about racism and stuff in America. And the one other person in my group, because for some reason we made a group of 2 and everyone else was like, let's go 6 at a time. We talked about, so we watched this documentary called White People. And it's like what it means to be white in America. And you'd think it's like white people trying to like defend themselves or whatever. And it sort of is, but it's more white people's perception of what's going on right now. And how there's like, we don't have a culture. It's all just hate and death and murder. But one of the things we talked, and the point that I'm bringing this up is we talked about how white people are very uncomfortable right now because they're not getting everything they're used to. And I've talked about this before with you, not on this channel, but there's this weird thing with equity right now where they're bringing minorities into the spotlight, but it's pushing back the white man, which isn't equity. But I thought about it some more, and I was like, I think this has to happen. We have to push people, the people who haven't had the spotlight, we have to push them into the spotlight, bring the white man out, and then we kind of have to have a slingshot effect for a while, where we're kind of going back and forth, pushing women and people of color into the spotlight, bring the white man back, then we have to go back again, and we have to, eventually we'll reach an even point where we're all in the spotlight together. That's going to take a while, and we're going to have to just deal with this uncomfortableness for, I think, a long time, because we're trying to get rid of centuries of hate. It's going to take a while to get rid of. It's going to take a while to reach a point where everyone's semi-happy. You're not going to make everyone happy, but you can reach the point of semi-happiness. And then we can start trying to get everything back. I mean, it is hard to reach equity because white is the majority. Like, that's just a scientific fact. But we are becoming less of a majority, which is cool. I think it's becoming less of a majority. But I think it's going to be hard to reach equity as long as there is a majority of any group. I mean, if you have a majority, they're going to want what the majority should, what they think the majority should have. But that's the problems that we're facing today, which is fine. We'll deal with it. It's just interesting to hear that it was different back in your time.
Well, also on that note, I don't know, I think I've told you about this before, where I grew up. Sometimes in the summertime, my sister and I would want to walk down to the pool, which was only about a half a mile from our house. And a group of KKK members would stand down in town and try to promote rallies. And there was a local farmer that would allow them to have these rallies on his farm, which included the cross burning and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed to be aware of it. Not that they were going to go after us, but it was, I guess that was like the most racism that I ever experienced growing up, was that there were these KKK members that would I remember them. They would stand down there in their white robes and their hats trying to get people to come to their rally.
And that's a very extreme form of racism. That's very scary, even if you're not African American or a person of color. I think anyone who's not with them seeing that would be uncomfortable. It doesn't matter who you are. Just the fact that like there's these extremists out there.
Yeah.
I know they're still around, like they still exist, but I've never seen them, which is something also different. So maybe racism in your time was more extreme, but in smaller doses, and nowadays it's just more widespread. Maybe.
Although now you have these white supremacists who they honestly believe that they're right, like that they're the greatest species. And it's like you're never, no matter what you say, you are never going to change their mind. Like that's the scary part, is that these people, they feel the way that they do, but they're violent too. Like they think that it's their duty to clean up the world or whatever. I mean, you might as well go back to Hitler. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. But and then the even scarier thought of that is that they're having babies and they're breeding that kind of hate into their children. So that's what the frustrating part about it is that it's never going to end, because these people they're still here. Like they're not going to go away.
I'd honestly like to interview one of them just to see why they think what they think. I'd like to see why they think that they're the best. Like I've heard a lot of people say like I'm the best, but I want to see why they think. It fascinates me morbidly so. It's just weird. I can't understand.
It's kind of scary. It's honestly, it's kind of scary to me, because those people are crazy. Like they're not right in the head.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It is. It is scary. So I'll move off of this topic. If we want to come back to it, we can. But I'd like to ask a very special question, because you're in a special situation compared to the rest of the students I've interviewed. What is your perception? Because you're a mom, and what is your perception of your schooling versus my schooling and my brother's schooling?
Well, I feel that teachers don't have as much power as they used to have. Like when I was in school, teachers were respected. Nowadays, I feel that teachers not only do they have too much on their plates, but they're not respected. And they're having to deal with a lot of things that when I was growing up, the teachers didn't have to deal with. There was the kids who had issues, whether they were developmental delays or special educational needs, those kids were put into separate classes. Some of the classes, they might be in the same class with you, but a lot of them were put in separate classes. And so then teachers could focus their attentions on, and were better equipped. The teachers who were equipped to deal with those kinds of things were with the students that had the needs. And then those of us who were regular learners, I'm not going to say normal, but regular learners, the teachers didn't have to divert their attention from what they were teaching to deal with a behavioral issue. There's a lot more going on in the classroom nowadays than when I was a kid, and and I feel like there's too much time taken. And I'm not saying that, every kid deserves to have an education, but when a teacher is having to talk down a student who's becoming violent in the classroom, but the kid's not even going to listen to them, that takes away from all the other students' learning experience. And I don't think it's fair. It's not fair to the students who are trying to learn, and it's not fair to the teachers. Right. I think there's a lot of stuff, like administration-wise, that we don't know about, that teachers have to deal with nowadays, versus when I think learning back when I was a kid was probably a lot easier. We didn't have this whole STEM initiative. Testing was different. We had, I'm trying to think of the tests we had. We had SATs, but there's like a lot more as far as college preparation nowadays. A lot of kids, they went to VOTech. They went to the technical school and learned a trade. There wasn't as much focus on going to college when I was a kid as there is now. But now I think the trades are coming back in there too. So, but yeah, definitely more. And like the weird math stuff, like some of the weird math was different. And
memes.
But yeah, I don't know. I think just more. But I think just the demands that the teachers have on them, they're a lot greater now. Yeah, so it really does affect the way that the students are learning.
Again, an interesting perspective. I think there is definitely, from the few stories I've heard from teachers, because I had some, I was the teacher's pet, I had some inside information. And just based on what they've told me, there's definitely a lot of stuff that administration not only doesn't tell us, the students, but doesn't tell the teachers, and they have to deal with split-second decisions and just all kinds of stuff that we can't even begin to understand as students. But to get back to kind of backtrack on something you said, that the teachers have to deal with more, and you mentioned like the kid getting aggressive in class. Children nowadays, students nowadays are a lot more messed up. What we're exposed to at home and through friends and in social media, and like what TV is willing to show us, and like what we learn through TV, we're so much more messed up mentally, and no teacher is equipped to handle that. No teacher goes into teaching thinking I'm going to be a psychologist. I plan to do that, sort of, but I'm still not a psychologist. I'm not going to be a psychologist. I am not equipped to handle that. I can do my best to mitigate it and relieve some of the stress. But there's a lot. There's a lot of expected teachers. I know that I don't know if you can attest to this. I'm almost certain that there's more pressure on testing nowadays than there was in the past.
Yeah, I agree with you. We didn't have those A lot of kids, they didn't even test. And I don't think I ever took the SATs, to be honest with you. I didn't have to just to go to community college.
Huh. Now the SAT is required for
the whole testing thing. Yeah. But yeah, they weren't. You didn't have to.
Wait, is 2020 going back to when you were a student now? Because now the SAT isn't required. Now they're like, no, you don't have to take it. You can't.
I never thought that just because you can take a test well, that doesn't really demonstrate the kind of student you are. I think it's just silly. It's just more ways for them to get money.
Oh yeah.
I digress.
No, it is all fund based. It is all money based. Everything's money. Everything's for the sake of money. College board makes money off the schools because they buy the tests. The school gets money from the government because they get good test scores. Because they only focus on it all leads back to money. Like all the issues lead back to money or something like that. So again, we'll move on from that and we'll go to another question that isn't, well, it's related, but less so. So as a student who's now out of school, at least for now, what is your opinion on Governor Hogan reopening schools?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. I would like to see all the teachers get vaccinations before the kids are coming in. I know that there are probably students who are not going to get the immunization based off of beliefs and, just because, there's kids who aren't getting vaccinated for basic things. So I know they're not going to get vaccinated for this. And there's kids who need to be in school. They need that structure. But there's kids who don't. Like Adam, he's fine being home learning, but I feel like part of growing up and learning, how do I want to word this? In order to develop social skills, you need to have socialization. This is that psychology piece that I'm thinking about here. So the psychology piece of things, yes, I really think the kids need to be back in school. However, the safety part of things, are we going to have this huge outbreak? We've already had lots of spikes. What is this going to do as far as that goes? So I don't really have a straight answer for that question, just because I have different feelings about it. I wish I could just say, I think it's good and this is why, but there's a lot of different reasons why it's good. There's reasons why it's not good. So I don't know. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's fine. An opinion is an opinion and it's valid. And I agree. I have to agree that school is important for many kids, including myself. Because you get that social aspect, and nothing will beat in-person schooling, right? Nothing will beat being able to be right there with the teacher, able to ask them any questions, being with your friends, being able to ask questions to them. Online schooling comes with plenty of issues, internet problems not being the only limited one. But in my opinion that these benefits of in-person schooling are completely neglected if everyone gets sick immediately.
Right.
There's no, again, in my opinion, there's no point going back to school if everyone gets sick. But again, I completely see your point that it is very important for everyone really that we go back to school. And I can understand your opinion. So one more question before the wrap-up question. I've told you this, everyone on the podcast knows this. My school's removing the arts. Woohoo! What is your opinion? And we'll make this more general. What is your opinion on removing the arts in schools?
So one thing comes to mind, honestly, right now. So a child that has who is involved in the arts, they become more well-rounded. They actually are better learners because they're tapping into the part of their brain that involves creativity. And you can't just have science, math. You can't just have those types of learning without having some kind of creativity piece. So art, growing up, we had shop class, which we did all kinds of things in shop class. I remember making a wooden clock, and it's a functioning wooden clock. But we use saws, like we use power tools and stuff to make these things. We stained the wood and sanded it. Like, we learned how to do these things. We had home economics. That class, we learned how to cook. We learned how to sew. We learned how to balance a checkbook. We learned how to budget. We did like this. We did this one project where we did like this is your life, and like this is how much money you have, and how much does it, you had to research how much everything costs that you wanted to put into your house. All of these things we did in middle school. And we had art class, we had chorus, we had, if you wanted to be in band, you were in band. I know that in high school now you have to choose whether you want to be in band or not. You can't, you have to sacrifice one class for the, I don't think that's fair. I think that you should still be able to have arts intermingled with the math and the science and social studies, whatever else classes you take. But I really feel like arts are very important. I just, I think taking those out really, it does kids a disservice, because it honestly, it limits their ability to learn in a different way. I mean, the world, not everyone thinks the same way, and some people learn differently, which is why there's got to be different ways of teaching. Some people, they're more visual. Some people, they're better listeners. Some need both. Some are hands-on learners. And, arts, that's how arts comes into play here, because it creates a more diverse brain. But yeah, I think arts are really important. Really important.
I agree. I mean, obviously, I agree. I mean, YouTube is arguably a form of art. Podcast is a form of art. Words are art. Everything, you can't escape art. Art is expression.
Yeah.
You can't just take that out. I wouldn't even, some of the art projects I've done are the best things I've ever done in school. Well, maybe not the best. My favorite things I've ever done in school. And I know if I have a choice to do a project one way or the other, I'm going to choose the more creative way. It just speaks better to me. And if you remove the art, some kids just never get to learn that they express themselves better through that medium. The project that I had to do for my magic class, we got to draw a thing, and I really enjoyed that.
That was very cool.
Thank you. I'm really proud of it. But I just like having that visual it's a good way to express myself. I get to visually see it. Even if I'm not the best at art, I still like doing it.
Yeah.
It just does a disservice to everyone to remove the arts.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the general consensus is removing the arts is bad, which is nice. I'm glad that I'm associating myself with people who like the arts. That's very good. Considering I'm also a big fan of the arts. But we'll do one final question to wrap up. Are there any other stories or words of wisdom that you'd like to leave the people with today?
Become a lifelong learner, and you'll never get bored. Always look for interesting and fun things to learn about, and you'll never get bored if you keep looking for things to learn about. I think that's why I've been in school for so long, is because I don't feel like I'm finished learning yet, and I probably will never be finished learning, because there's just so much out there that you can educate yourself with, and I'm not talking just formal schooling, but life in general can be a learning experience. But just maybe just taking the time to learn about a different culture. Our country is becoming more diverse every day, and taking time to learn something about a culture that you may not be familiar with can really open some doors for you. So yeah, that's my advice.
That's wonderful. That's very good. I definitely agree. Life is a learning experience. Thank you very much for coming on and taking time out of your day to share your story and your experience. Hopefully someone...
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Seriously, though, thank you. I hope someone listens to this and it just something about that resonates with them. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon.